Good morning and welcome everyone. So this is our Teams webinar, telephony webinar, all around modernising your telephony with Teams. My name is Mike Tansey, so I'm the Head of Sales at Chess, and with me today I have the brilliant Martin Bacon, our Consultants Team Leader and Unified Comms Specialist. So
Good
we're
morning.
excited. Good morning. We're excited to be presenting today, so we'll be sharing ideas of what's worked well in industry. For those that haven't been to Chess Webinar before, just a little bit of housekeeping. So we'll be recording the session, so a copy of which will be made available tomorrow. For any questions, we'll keep them 15 minutes at the end of the webinar. But if you want to post your questions as you go, please use the Q&A tab and at the top of the screen and paste them in there so you don't forget them. We'll come on to those at the end. And finally, we're offering a free one-to-one workshop for each of the companies here today. That's a consultant-led session with Martin to discuss your specific telephony requirements. Okay, so let's take a quick look at what we're covering today in the agenda. So we've covered high-level introductions there. Next, we'll dive into the design, features, and licensing. So this is where we explore the core of the solutions, what makes it unique, how they're structured, and how they're licensed as well. We'll then move into the call recording options, so a key area for compliance and operational efficiency as well. And it will, especially for teams that need to capture and manage communications securely. After that, we will guide you through how to transition. So whether you're moving from a legacy system or adopting this for the first time, we'll outline some steps to make that process smooth and successful. And we'll also share some real world use cases and how we've helped others leverage the solutions in practical ways and impactful ways as well. And then really open floor. So we'll open it up for Q&A where you can ask any questions that are on your mind. And finally, we'll wrap up with any closing remarks and just summarize any key takeaways. Before I hand over to Martin, I'll cover off a quick overview to Chess for those that are less familiar. So we are one of the UK's leading independent technology service providers dedicated to making it easy to work with businesses anywhere, anytime, and making that more secure. We have a team of 280 IT professionals and we support over 18,000 customers, and we turn over just shy of 50 million annually. We offer a comprehensive range of services across 6 key areas, so going down the coloured ribbons on the screen in order. So Connect for your internet, mobile voice and data needs. Cloud for infrastructure, platform or software as a service offerings. Devices for your laptops, your hardware, your networking. Digital service for AI, Microsoft 365, Power Platform, and data services. Security for those end-to-end service offerings ranging from pen tests and cyber essentials through to managed SOCs combined with the power and strength of our sister company, CyberLab. And lastly, professional services, so providing consultancy, project management, user adoption, and managed services as well. So really, our mission at Chess is to help businesses reduce cost, protect data, and work better together using that technology stack. So we achieve that through forming long-term strategic partnerships with our customers. And that's Chess in a slide. So I'll now pass over to Martin to kick off the webinar. Martin, over to you, please.
Great, thanks, Mike. It was good to see everyone today. So just to reiterate, I've been in the business 11 years, so I'm a geek at heart and I love this stuff. So please do get them questions in. It's great. I'd love getting a challenging one if you can. If there's anything we can't answer, I can come back to you. It's not a problem. But I just wanted to really reiterate here around our Microsoft pedigree in many respects. So out of the 6 solution designations, we currently have 5, along with 2 specializations, one in cloud security around that piece. But of course, more importantly, in relation to today's subject, the calling for Microsoft Teams specialization as well. So we've been involved in this for a number of years now, right from the very early days prior to launch of Teams Voice. We're part of the Microsoft Technology Adoption Program, which means we're one of a handful of UK Microsoft partners that actively do beta testing, and I head up that team here at Chess. So we get to see all the new stuff that's coming through, give some sneak peeks about some certain bits and bobs. It is under the NDA, so we have to be obviously mindful of that, but it really does help us keep on the front foot, and as these things are coming through, we can really test them in anger and make sure that they're good. And of course, when they're released, we can give you the heads up and keep up to speed on it. So it's really good in that sense. I wanted to start really around the market prediction for Teams, and Microsoft have become very much disruptor in this particular area. As we all know, there are a lot of providers out there, but I think the trust that Microsoft bring along with the integration really does see that Cavell is forecasting an additional 50 million Teams telephony users by 2028, and that is a big number. 50% of the global market, it's not anything to be shy of. It's very significant. And the key players they're up against, for example, are the likes of Zoom. Zoom are also very sort of big in this space, but the Microsoft edge is really that its integration is really there. It's currently 2 million users in the UK, but that's expected to exceed 6 million by that 2028. So globally, there's going to be a big influx. And I think a lot of that has really come down to Operator Connect, which is what we're going to talk a bit about today as well, where it's very simple to bring on board, integrate, and push it through that way. I want to give you a bit of history of really where Teams Voice came from. So throwbacks from Skype for Business and the acquisition that they did there, utilizing some of that technology, bringing it through in terms of the communications piece, and of course all of the legacy stuff before that. But the Teams Voice piece really started with calling plans. So that's the entry level that you can buy directly from Microsoft or through a licensing partner. They then opened it up a bit more for direct routing, and that was where you could buy your own session border controllers, host them in a data center, put zip trunks, integrate that into Teams. That slightly broadened itself out with many service providers getting multi-tenanted session border controllers where you could just take it as a service from them. And then the latest iteration in relation to Operator Connect. So it's very similar to direct routing in relation to the mechanisms, but it's a lot simpler and a lot easier to onboard. You don't have to do any PowerShell scripts, for example, to set things up. And to give you an idea of that, the Operator Connect design has some certain prerequisites, and Microsoft are very, very stringent in relation to how Operator Connect partners are onboarded. So firstly, they must be certified from Microsoft, so they have to comply with all the standards set by them. They need to ensure that there's specific quality of service levels around the voice capability, and also stringent service level agreements in relation to uptime, service faults, etc. It is directly connected into Microsoft Azure peering services. So with direct routing, for example, there'd be a few hops to maybe get into that Azure piece. With Operator Connect, it's straight in, it's plumbed straight in that way. So you've got that high level of resilience. And of course, compliance. Carriers have to be regulated and licensed operators within their country, as well as having all fully compliant architecture, resilience, and the integrations piece. And ultimately is signed off by Microsoft. The little diagram we've got here is a very simplistic view, but I never like to go too geeky on these things. But effectively, your Microsoft phone system is sitting here in the cloud with your licensing in your tenant, and here are your users. You've got the internet to the session border controllers, which breaks out to the PSTN network here and here. So it's really, really straightforward. And we can talk a bit more about that in the future, where we can look at the sort of finer level detail, should you really want to get geeky with me, and we can go through that. But I think what really differentiates this product is, for me, the mechanisms of how Microsoft are constantly releasing new things. And I'm going to go through a few of the key features, but this is just a tiny snippet. And of course, there are business cases related to your uniquenesses, I guess, in respect of your operations, your sector, and everything that you've got there. So the auto attendants, as you'd expect, very customizable, easily configure multi-level routing options, has some great stuff in relation to text to speech as well. So to give you an example, you can say, I want my auto attendant, you type it in. Hi, welcome to XYZ company. Please press 1 for this, 2 for that. A variety of language options from all over the world, but there's also about 10 different UK English accents you can put on there. For instance, there's Irish, South African, we've also got Canadian, American, English, of course, etc. Australian, that's my favorite in that one. So it's a really good piece there. Unlimited amount of call queues. So a great way of getting those call routing elements done. You've got a mechanism there as well, which is quite interesting, where you can utilize 365 groups and assign that to a call group. So rather than adding new users as they're coming in, let's say, for instance, you've got an accounts 365 group and you want them to be in the accounts telephony. As soon as they get in the accounts group, you configure that to the queue and it's done. You can, of course, use the traditional method of adding users individually, but there's also another option where you can actually get calls to go to Teams channels. And that's really clever because it puts it into a different area where you're not just reliant on your pull pop-up window happening. Within calls to channels, you can actually see it within the channel. You have a tab called calls, and you can see the status of your peers that are in there, whether they're opted in, opted out, and their status, all the call history for that queue, any relevant voicemails as well. So it's quite a good one, that. Also, just released in November for call queues, which is really good, is automatic callback services. So usual things you normally tend to see this really about in high-end sort of contact center elements, where if your queue is busy and you wanted to offer it, you can give the customer the option to stay within their position in the queue. You'd have a message something like, all of our agents are busy at the moment, however, please press 1 to stay in the queue and we'll call you back automatically. They press 1, does that, so you've got that automatic callback service. When an agent's free, rings the agent, connects the customer up and joins it that way. In the event that you can't get through to the customer, an auto email alert can go out to a mailbox group, say couldn't contact. Really cool stuff. A lot of the gripes, I guess, traditionally we've had with telephony is updating messages, updating announcements, out of hours messages, that sort of thing. With Teams, you can, of course, do that. You can add them, upload them as an MP3 WAV file, for example. But the key thing you can also do is text to speech. So you can just type in what you want and it will just say it in whatever accent language we chose at the beginning. So it's really good. Devices and endpoints, there's a multitude of devices and endpoints. I've got a slide on this a little bit later, but I think what's really important about this is if you've made any significant investments in hardware for your current telephony platform, for example, Microsoft deployed something which is free of charge called SIP Gateway. And that has a defined list of specific devices that can connect to Microsoft Teams with the right firmware and with the right process for you to repurpose those devices. There's a degree of functionality lost, of course, as you'd expect, but it's a great way to, if you've got them assets still on sort of your asset register, for example, and you're still writing off the values, it's a good way to sort of look at reusing those. Delegation of admin rights, something which was being screamed for in relation to this and not giving people access to Teams admin centers where you might have power users or team leaders. There's something in Teams voice called authorized users, and you can set policies to delegate specifics around anything on a call queue or indeed on an auto attendant for specific people to modify any element you want through their Teams client. So they just go to settings in their Teams client, calls, and then you'll get the tabs appear at the top of what they can modify. It's a great little thing. Teams Premium, really useful. So with calls, it will also record calls. You get the additional features around reporting. You can also get the Teams Queues app, which is part of the Teams Premium, where it will give you up to 28 days worth of historical reporting, but also up to the minute live dashboard views. In preview at the moment, something which is just coming, it's almost on the cusp. Within that Teams Premium Queues app, you can do whisper, monitor, barge, and takeover as well. You can opt people in. So it's a great little add-on that's been brought in for your entry level into those stats and management for your agents and stuff. It's really good. Goes without saying, Copilot integration, of course, it's a natural progression that we're seeing, and I work very closely with James Mallory in our team to ensure that we're all joined up on this. But when you're in a call, you can set record, it will take the call notes, it will summarize it for you, give you a list of actions, so fully integrated. You can also integrate Copilot using the facilitator agent within Teams Voice, which means it doesn't record the call, but whilst you're in the conversation, it is actually making a list of items and stuff as you're going through for you to copy and paste out. So that's not call recording, but you're still getting it. A great new feature which is just coming through is where you can transfer the call, but also include those AI notes to send on to the person you're transferring to. So they've got all the subject matter about what you've discussed so far. So you don't have to sit there and explain, oh, I'm putting a call through to you. Customer wants this, customer wants that. They were talking about this. They've got an issue with that. It can all be in the call notes as you transfer it. Really cool. And then, of course, finally, security. You've got all the underlying security elements that are built in naturally to 365, single sign-on, multi-factor authentication. It's all there. So you don't have two systems to manage. If you're adding a new user, it's done. If you're removing a user, it's automatically done. Really, really cool stuff. We'll go on to licensing, because that's always a big question that comes up. So there are effectively a couple of components you need to factor in. If you've already got an E5 license, Microsoft Teams phone system is already included, which is great because you not only reap all the benefits of sort of the additional security elements of E5, but you're also getting that phone system license. So a very easy onboarder, so to say, and very cost effective in that sense to do that. But if you haven't, if you're on a business premium, E3 or whatever, you can just buy a Teams phone system license per user for any user that needs to handle calls. So you don't need to license everybody, just those people that are handling calls. One thing which is really useful is the shared device license. So this is great if you've got people that may be sharing handsets and you don't want to have a named user on them, for example. So certain situations like a reception where you might have a phone that someone picks up and just dials could be a shared device. You could have a kitchen, you could have a shared area or warehouse or whatever like that. But the key thing about that is that you just pay for the shared device license, which includes the Teams components that you need and the phone system. So you don't need an underlying 365 license to then add it on, which is a great little feature. And then finally, the Operator Connect license. So this is a per user per month license normally, taken from the telephony provider. It's all enabled as a managed service. So that will include managed session border controllers, the PSTN, the minutes, the SIP trunks, etc., all included. That's the way we do it, for example. But other vendors may vary how they do it. Some might do it per channel, some do it per user. But that gives you an idea of the sort of components you need in relation to those particular parts. Let's talk about devices because it's an important one. As much as we are in the modern world, a lot of people still like to have a handset on their desk. I have loads, but that's because I have to demonstrate them and I get sent them to me from Microsoft and all these vendors for testing and playing with and breaking, hopefully some of the time to test it in its fully. But all of them will be Android based. So this is an Android based operating system. Entry level handsets can start from around 90 to 100 pounds, but right up to 800. So that Crestron you see there, which is a UC10, has got the full meeting room capabilities effectively in it, where you've got the camera, it's microphone, speaker, etc. So you can have a full-blown Teams meeting, other than screen sharing, of course, from that device specifically. I've actually got one there. I use it on a regular basis just to demonstrate to customers. You've got other devices that can also facilitate expansion units, for example, for reception areas maybe, or if you've got a lot of contacts or speed dials that you need to do. But these ones here, you're pretty much looking at the flagship models of these particular vendors, but they have got lower models that are a little bit more palatable in terms of cost, because ultimately we don't really want the old grey plastic on desks and we want to do a better for the environment. And if I'm honest, I've got a little bit of a case study that's coming later, and you'll see that the transition for this is a lot easier that you can than it really can be said. So I'm going to touch on call recording because this is a really important one to think about. If you've got any compliance requirements, we have to think of a compliant call recording solution. If you're just needing to ad hoc call record, it's on demand. It's already built into Teams, very much so as you would a normal Teams meeting. So you just hit the more button, you click record and transcribe. They get that automated. This call is being recorded, and it all comes through. It will transcribe everything that's being said from all parties. You can have closed captions. And then once you've got that transcription and you finish the call, you can even do keyword searches, summarization, etc., and do all that. Something to be mindful of is it does store all of those ad hoc call recordings in the user's OneDrive. So be mindful of your retention policies and your tenant configuration. I've spoken to some customers in relation to this where they're using it, and that you could create some cool Power Automate scripts to maybe take those files, move into SharePoint, etc., on a regular basis. So it's all about the art of the possible of what we can do with those sort of tools, of which, of course, we can help you with. But Copilot ready. So you're doing phone calls, you're recording. I've got a little example here actually where I put in a little bit of call recording. So here's the transcript generated from my conversation with myself. I do it quite often when I'm testing. I'm not going nuts, but this gives you a bit of an idea of what we're talking about. And then Copilot, I asked it to recap the call here, and then it gives you a very simple summary of everything that was said. I mean, this is just a short example, of course. If you're going into detail, you've got multiple attendants, it will give you a lot more based on what you want. And recap the call isn't just the only prompt you'd use. It's summarize this call with key decisions and action items. I put a few examples there. Extract customer pain points mentioned during the call. So great for those sort of customer services called QA, quality assurance checks, and that sort of thing. It's really useful there. Let's talk about transition. And I do this probably about 6 times a week with customers, talking about how they can move into this solution. I always say, first of all, get a session and look at the art of the possible, see what it can do, and just ask every question you can imagine. And there's always something coming down the line. A recent one I got asked, for example, was CRM integration. As much as there's nothing out of the box for this, Microsoft developed the ability to open app in browser upon an inbound call, for example, and we've got mechanisms to do that, click to dial as well from CRM systems. It can all be done. I always recommend to get a good understanding of exactly how your phone system works currently, the call user groups, overflows, voicemails, and most people will have a flow sort of diagram or a visio of how that's working. But this gives you the ultimate opportunity to think about it and make it better, improve it, and simplify in many respects. I'm always very conscious of people, and one of the biggest challenges to any technology deployment, which we experience every day with our customers, is understanding what they want. And we find with Teams specifically, a lot of people are already embedded, they're already using it on a day-to-day basis, and they love it, and they wouldn't be able to do without it now. Getting a form survey, for example, out there, ask them what they'd like. Do they want a handset? Are they happy with a headset? What are those pain points? We've got forms for this, for example, that can help you with those questionnaires, but it will enable you to get some feedback around what's annoying people. Because once you've got them annoyances and those gripes about the current system, it's very easy for you to say, right, here's what you told us, here's what we are going to look at and fix. And then when it comes to looking at the solution, say, you said this, we're going to do this, everyone's happy. The commercials element, of course, is something which is fundamentally important to this, because legacy systems, depending on whether you are already in the cloud or you've got an on-premises platform, the nature of those is that many of the legacy platforms, such as NEC, Panasonic, for example, have exited the UK market, and their support subscriptions are now effectively coming to an end. You may struggle getting parts, maintenance agreements, etc. SLAs are really going to skew it. Any necessary licensing you might have. So, for example, what we find with a lot of traditional telephony platforms is you have a base license, you have a voicemail license, you might have an auto attendant license, a queue license, a supervisor, and it can just add up and add up and add up. And then, of course, you've got the underlying technology that's connecting it to that PSTN network. If it's ISDN, of course, you've got the 2027 switch off to think about in January that year. Getting rid of all that old copper, this solves that immediately. If you are on SIP, look at your SIP trunk charges. If you've got any out of number minutes that need to be billed, all those call costs, number hosting, for example. Don't charge number hosting in Teams. If you're getting charged numbers at the moment, you can wipe those costs out. So get a real good, clear understanding of your current commercials and exactly how much it's costing you, because it will help you get that ROI model built when you look at it moving forward. I know I'm telling people a lot of the basic stuff here, but it's surprising how many things can be forgotten when it comes to the legacy systems. Adoption and change management, we do a lot of this, and preparing your people to get the feedback. And so we can go through a very sort of low level or indeed a high level sort of process when it comes to adoption and change management, following the ProSci model, where we can actually get real sort of champions and get that feedback, and team leaders, for example, and you can really go to town in terms of getting all that stuff back. Look at a proof of concept. It's really important to get your key people to test this. A lot of the proof of concepts I've helped deploy and put in within a week, sometimes days. People are saying, I love it, let's just do it. But of course, you want to test it and make sure you aren't missing anything, so you can really prove that value. And look at phasing. You don't have to do everything at once. The nature of the way that telephony works now is you may have multiple sites, multiple users. Your existing telephony platform can forward calls to Teams, so you could get a group of 10 users on, for example, or 100 users, forward their current calls from the current system to temporary numbers on Teams, get the flow going, and then gradually do that deployment. We've done it a number of different ways and with a number of different customers. So that's the research phase. And then when we look at deployment, it's easier when it comes to Teams, but project management, fundamentally, there's a lot of to-in and fro-in that goes on. We need ownership on both sides, of the project side as well as the internal customer side. Factor in number porting, can take up to 30 working days, and if anything, is probably the most convoluted part of all of this, because you might have single numbers, you might have DDI ranges, finding your existing numbers can be tricky, but we can help with that. For all of our customers that move into Teams, we actually manage all of that number porting process. So we have a letter of authority where we get all the numbers in, customers sign it, give it to us, our PMs manage all that process, so you don't have to. The adoption and training, maximize that ROI as we discussed, get people skilled up before it goes in. Make sure on those times. When you're phasing plans, everyone's up to speed. Build and test. The great thing about this is because it's all in Teams, you can get it up and running. You can test the auto attendance, the queues, all the routing, voicemails. Comes with dummy numbers that we can put on there, for example, and most other providers can do that too. Test it fully. The great thing is when you're testing in that phase, if you need to fall back, great, you've got that to do. Obviously, communicate the dates and plan. We tend to have people, depending on the size of the transition, have people on site just to make sure that you've got that sort of bedside hand holding should anyone have any issues, but make sure there's a fallback plan. Majority of the time, the only thing that can really catch you out is number porting, for example. There might be a glitch there, but the great thing about number porting is you can push it back, cancel it, but once you cancel it, you start again, so you can push back, so think about that. And I think with this solution, one thing that's really differentiated itself, I mean, I look after 5 different telephony solutions here at Chess, so I have different things all in my brain that I have to switch on, switch off, depending on the solution I'm looking at. With Teams, I'm astounded in terms of the amount of stuff that's coming down the line on a regular basis where it's being thought of. And I think it's great for me and our team as well, in that we actually get to input into these things and test them and feed back to Microsoft. Say, have you thought about this? How about doing it this way, for example? I mean, there's a great new little feature about escalating a call to a Teams meeting that's coming soon. So keep an eye out for that one. But those regular quarterly business reviews, I do a lot of them with our customers, and I'll go through a slide deck, what's new in Teams as well as calling, because Teams is also getting loads of new stuff. So I cover all of that with our customers. I'm going to give you a real world example, actually. So Freese are a large firm of solicitors, 13 offices around the UK, and I started the initial consultation process with this business back in 2021, just during the work from home COVID period. A really old system in place, and we did all the investigations. They moved, and bear in mind, it's a team of lawyers, yeah, so quite set in their ways in many respects. Didn't want any devices on desk. Everyone moved to headsets or mobile app, for example. We implemented the calls to channels for the IT team, which worked really well for them because they had a first line, second line, third line, for example, and they could have calls to channels. So they could see second line, who's available, third line. So when they're transferring calls, they were away from their desks a lot, made it really easy. They're using the Teams premium piece for the call stats and live monitoring. Subsequently, obviously pushed into the Teams room with calling in Teams rooms as well. Of course, you can attach Microsoft Teams voice to your meeting rooms if you want to do audio calls, and also in the current earlier stages of the Copilot adoption to really reap maximum ROI. Being a legal firm, spending a lot of time doing transcriptions, for example, and every time matters, every bit of time may be billable. So for them, the tools that are built into Teams, such as the transcription and all those sort of things, really important. One thing actually, which I think is useful for these guys coming through, is their ability to move into international markets. So one of the challenges that people have is interpretation or interpreters needing to join. Microsoft have got now a live interpretation agent. So you could be in a meeting, you can choose your default language, and it's astounding. I was playing with this the other day. I set my language to be French. I'm talking in English, and it's translating it to French in my voice to the other person at the other end. It was really cool. So if you want a demo of that, I'm happy to show you that as well, if you're ever doing any of those sort of things. Domino's Pizza, this was an interesting one, and it presented me quite a challenge because they had a real unique case. It wasn't a big one, but it was for their main office and the warehouse distribution centre all around the UK. And they were on old traditional SIP, ICM, ITEL. They were looking at those calling plans from Microsoft, but when they were scaling it out, it was too expensive. So the Operator Connect model worked really well for bringing those costs down. They did have some shared devices because they got some bits, but one of the challenges they had were the door entry systems that they had, for instance, in the head office and warehouse, intercoms and loud bells, for example, but we can integrate those using the SIP gateway, the ATA devices, for example. And also we integrated it with a SIP-based Motorola radio system. They just invested in this. And so we managed to get that working with it as well, all over SIP. And so it was all joined up, and they absolutely love it. And that's been in place for coming on 4 years now, and working really well. So Mike, that is my little pitch about a snippet of what's good and what to look for and how I can get in front of these people to show them all the good stuff about Teams Voice. Have we got any Q&A that's come through?
Thanks, Martin. Yeah, just firstly, just say thanks. Good informative session. Some of the new features, the automatic callback, all bits like that, add a very premium experience, I think, to the Teams Voice offering, and some nice case studies in there as well. So we've held 15 minutes at the end of this session, really just to answer any questions that people have around the room. So what I could do is, if you've got any questions, can I kind of ask you post them in the Q&A tab at the moment? I think we've got a couple that are coming in, and also you can message me directly if you've got any questions as well. So let's run through some of these. So the first question from Peter. We have a large number of DECT phones on our PBX. Are mobile handsets available, or should we be using mobile phones with Teams installed to facilitate this? Great question.
Sure, great question. So the SIP gateway does have a number of vendors DECT solutions that are capable with that. As I mentioned before, you do lose a bit of functionality. We've recently done a deployment for English Heritage, actually helping them, and they're using similar solution where they've got DECT handsets, DECT base stations. They're using Yealink, and we put them on SIP gateway for all of their sites around the UK, and that's working really well. There isn't a native Teams-based DECT solution, but one thing we've come against recently is that if you haven't got existing DECT infrastructure that's compatible, reinvesting in that DECT infrastructure is quite tricky and commercially can have an impact. So Ascom, I've actually got one here, look at this, as if by magic. This is a voice over Wi-Fi handset called an Ascom i63 Talker. So this is Teams SIP gateway capable, and this can work over your existing Wi-Fi. So that's one option to consider. And of course, you've got the mobile app as well. I mean, as long as you've got a great Wi-Fi in terms of a mesh, and you've got something that can hand off calls between access points, you'll find that the experience on Android and iOS is more than capable. You see those situations as well, I think, in a lot of first-line worker scenarios where first-line workers may have a tablet or a small device where you can integrate the voice into that as well. So it's happy to look through that in a bit more detail with you to look at the models. We can check the SIP gateway compatibility to see if it's possible.
Perfect. Thank you, Martin. Hopefully, Peter, that answered your question. Got a few questions coming in as well. So what is the process for SIP gateway in relation to legacy devices? So we have some shared areas where it might be able to be useful to repurpose some of the existing handsets.
Sure. So similar to the last one, so more about the process, I think.
Yeah.
Let's say we take an old handset that you might have in the cupboard and it is compatible with SIP gateway, power on, get onto the interface via the web, give it a factory reset. The next stage is to get the latest Teams SIP gateway compatible firmware on there, so make sure it's at that level. And then for each region, so where EMEA, for example, there's a SIP gateway URL that needs to be added on to the device or the base station or whatever it may be. Pop that on, get the MAC address, put that into the Teams admin center under SIP devices. That goes in, generate an activation code. Once it's all synced up and done, you pick up the phone, you do *55* activation code, and boom, it connects up and goes through. Once you've got that, you sign in to the user that you want, and it will do all the stuff in the background. So it sounds, there's a few steps, but it's refined from where it was, so it's a lot better. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. I think the tricky bit is getting the factory reset done, the firmware update. But once you're at that stage, it's pretty much plain sailing. Great thing about it, of course, though, is you can monitor it in Teams admin center. So even with your Android devices for Teams, for example, you can monitor any updates that you need to do, schedule them, push them through there, check call quality, usage, everything like that is all done through Teams admin center, which compared to a traditional phone system is quite tricky. So you have to do it a number of different ways. So yeah, it works really well.
Fantastic. Yep. Thanks, Martin. So a couple of questions come through direct, and Matt as well has posted one. So Matt's question, is there a way to hot desk phones so when somebody turns up at a desk and they sign into the handset, they have access to all the incoming calls without using Teams client on their laptop? Again, great question.
Yes. So there's a number of ways you can do this. You can set up the phone in kiosk mode, so to say, or you can enable hot desking for a user's phone. So if I had my phone here, I can tick a button in the policy for that device to say enable QR code for hot desk. And what that enables you to do is from your phone, you come up to the phone, you scan the QR code, takes you through to your Microsoft login. So you have to use your own Microsoft credentials. You sign in, It will then ask you how long you want to be signed in for that hot desking period. You can select it, or you can default it to whatever you want. Your hot desking, all your calls will come to there. So it works really well in that sense. If you've got a bank of phones that you just want as generic, you can do the same thing as well. So yeah, hot desking works really well.
Brilliant. Thank you, Martin. Okay, a question coming through direct from Sarah. What happens if Microsoft have an issue with Teams? Are we losing call capability? Now, that does happen from time to time, doesn't it? But
it can, yes. I can't speak for other providers, but what we have is a portal. So it's a disaster recovery portal. And what that has is all of your telephone numbers, when they're ported in, are visible in that portal. What you can do in that portal, which is completely separate from Teams, it sort of sits in the middle, is define a BCP or DR plan that you want in the event that you can't connect to Teams. So for instance, on my demo account, I've got my DDI routed to be my mobile if I invoke BCP. And it's a great little portal where you can pre-plan all of that BCP. It could be a single number, it could be an outsourced call center, whatever you've got. We give our customers access to that portal. So in the event there's an issue, they can log in, number management, manage BCP, select all, invoke, and all those numbers will route to wherever you've defined them. Once Microsoft's issue is potentially finished, you go back in, disable BCP, and everything can route as normal. So, and we provide that as free of charge service on our platform, just to give that extra peace of mind. I think a lot of customers are always very conscious now that with these solutions being embedded, you are somewhat putting all your eggs in one basket. And we found that by having that there, it gives you that sense of security, so to say, in the event it all does go wrong.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks, Martin. Sarah's come back to say yes, that helps. Thank you.
Yep.
She's got one more question from Sarah. Can you mix methods of connectivity? So she's put an example, e.g. Microsoft calling plans, direct routing, and operator connect.
Yeah, absolutely. The beauty of it is it's flexible. So we've used this in a number of scenarios for customers. So we had a customer that had large UK presence and two people, for instance, that worked in the US. And I think they had another one in Australia and another one in Eastern Europe somewhere. So we did Operator Connect for all of the UK users. But then we just used Microsoft Teams calling plans for the US users because commercially it worked out better for them because the US obviously get a better rate. And also you have to think about latency. So when you're putting calling plans on for the US, you don't want to come in all the way over to the UK and then come in all the way back. So Microsoft calling plans work really well for those disparate areas. But you can have a mix of calling plans, direct routing, and Operator Connect as well.
Thanks, Martin. Another question in the Q&A. So DECT IP phones, do you need to provision them on TAC or just update firmware to enable SIP gateway and sign in?
Yes, you will need to provision them on TAC. So you just grab the MAC address and you put that in the Teams Admin Center for that to be registered. You can do a bulk upload as well. So if you've got a number of them, there's a bulk upload tool that you can do within Teams Admin Center. So going to Teams Admin Center, go to Teams devices, and at the bottom you'll see SIP devices. One thing to bear in mind if you're looking at that is that you will need to reconfigure or configure a new policy to enable SIP-based handset calls, and you don't have to do it across everyone, of course, but there is a policy you have to tick the box, so I'll change the switch to do that. But yes, it's very, very slick. Little bit different, of course, to a standard Android base where you just plug the phone in, you sign in, and it comes up. But those steps, they can be automated pretty quickly.
Thank you, Martin. And I think that's all of the questions. Speak now, if there is one. But I think what we'll do is we'll switch on to the feedback form. So thank you, Martin. Thank you, everyone, for your great questions there. So I'd like to ask everyone with a phone in front of them to kindly scan the QR code and tell us how we did. So we do adapt these webinars based on feedback, and you'll note on the form there's an option to book a consultancy session in with Martin.
Yep.
This is a technically led session. We need to run through your telephony scenarios, your requirements. It's great to have a sounding board from somebody who's living and breathing telephony, and who's run his own kind of company around telephony prior to sending it to Chess. Martin has the experience and he sees a lot of customers across different verticals. So if you want to discuss your specifics, please book that in via the QR code. There's even an option, I think, to set up a working proof of concept that you can trial those systems. I think the proof of concept, Martin, that's kind of a free of charge, and all the customers do is pay for the engineering time.
Yeah, so the engineering time just to set up the initial connection to the tenant, and any queues or auto attendants you want to play with, but it's really straightforward. We provide the operator connect piece free of charge for 30 days for you to play with, but of course you would need to put your team's phone system license on, but you can do that on a monthly, just for a few users. Of course, if you've got E5, you're pretty much ready to roll. So yeah, that's a good way to do it.
Perfect. Yep. Thank you, Martin. And that concludes the webinar. So I'd last just say big thank you to Martin for the session.
Been a
Thank you all
pleasure.
for attending the webinar as well, and for the great questions. A copy of the recording and the slides will be sent out tomorrow. And do make sure you sign up and hit that connect. Hopefully we'll see you at the next events. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks, everyone.